Some people spend their entire lives trying to succeed, without ever realizing their brain has been quietly trained to resist the very future they want. And the terrifying part, most never notice it happening. You wake up, you try, you push, you read the books, watch the videos, set the goals, and still something pulls you back. Not laziness, not bad luck, something deeper, something installed. You think you're making decisions consciously, but many of the beliefs shaping your choices were placed inside you before you even understood what life was, before you had the language to question them, before you had the awareness to reject them. They were already running. And right now, today, they are still running. Here is what changes everything, though. Once you see the pattern, you will never see yourself the same way again. And that is exactly what this video is going to show you. Welcome to the Right Mindset, the channel built for people who are done being mentally managed by a past they never consciously chose. If that already sounds like you, you're in the right place. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what comes next may be the most important thing you watch this year. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong about their own minds. Your brain does not prioritize your happiness. It does not prioritize your ambition, your goals, your dreams, or your potential. It prioritizes one thing above everything else: familiarity. Your brain's primary function, evolutionarily, biologically, neurologically, is to keep you alive by keeping you in known territory. That's it. That was always the job. And for tens of thousands of years, that was brilliant. The familiar was safe. The unknown was dangerous. The brain that resisted change kept its body alive. The brain that chased the unfamiliar often didn't survive long enough to pass on its genes. So we evolved to resist change at a cellular level. But here is the problem. The world changed. Rapidly. Radically. In a matter of decades, the external environment transformed beyond recognition. And yet the brain, your brain, is still running the same core operating logic it ran in a world of predators and scarcity. It still treats the unfamiliar as a threat. It still triggers discomfort when you try to grow. It still labels the unknown as dangerous, even when the unknown is a better job, a bigger dream, or a version of yourself you've always wanted to become. Now add something else on top of that ancient survival wiring. Your childhood. From the moment you were born, your brain was recording every emotional experience, every repeated message, every environment you were placed in before you had any say in the matter. Your nervous system was absorbing all of it, building patterns, building associations, building beliefs about who you are and what the world is and what is possible for someone like you. And those early recordings didn't just sit there passively. They became your defaults. They became the lens through which you filter every decision, every opportunity, every relationship, every risk, right up until this moment. And now layer one more thing onto all of this. Your brain was never designed for the world you're currently living in. It was never built for infinite notifications. It was never built for constant social comparison, watching curated highlights of other people's lives on a screen for hours every single day. It was never built for algorithmic stimulation engineered by some of the smartest engineers on the planet to keep you scrolling, clicking, reacting, consuming. It was never built for 24-hour distraction, available in your pocket at all times. Your brain is an ancient instrument being played in an orchestra it was never designed for. And the neuroscience is clear on this. Neurons that fire together wire together. That principle, articulated by neuropsychologist Donald Hebb, explains everything about why you are the way you are. Every repeated thought, every repeated emotion, every repeated behavior strengthens a neural pathway. The more you repeat it, the more automatic it becomes. The more automatic it becomes, the more it feels like you. Which means the patterns you've been repeating, consciously or not, are becoming more locked in every single day. But here is the part that most people miss. The strangest part isn't that your brain learned these patterns. It's that your brain now actively protects them. I want to introduce you to someone. His name is Daniel. And I want to be clear about something before I tell you about him. Daniel is not a motivational story. He is not a highlight reel. He is not a success poster. Daniel is real in the way that matters most, because some version of him lives inside millions of people watching a video exactly like this one right now. Daniel is intelligent. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with him knows it. He is disciplined when he wants to be. He works hard. He is thoughtful, self-aware, and genuinely good at almost everything he commits to. And he has been stuck for years. Not stuck in an obvious way. Not broke, not broken, not completely lost. Just beneath himself, operating consistently below what he knows is possible for him. He overthinks before starting. He delays action until the moment feels right, and the moment never feels quite right. He fears being judged more than he fears wasting time. He avoids visibility, avoids putting himself forward, avoids the kind of bold moves that would actually change his trajectory. And somewhere underneath all of it, underneath the productivity hacks and the journals and the self-help books and the Sunday resets, is a belief he has never said out loud to anyone. A belief that success, real success, belongs to other people. Not in a dramatic, self-pitying way. Just quietly, just as a background assumption that has been running so long it stopped feeling like a belief and started feeling like reality. Daniel doesn't hate himself. He functions. He makes progress. He is, by most external measures, doing okay. But deep down, he doesn't fully believe a bigger life is meant for him. That right there, that quiet, invisible ceiling, is the thing that no productivity system, no motivational video, no 5M routine will ever fix. Because the problem isn't Daniel's habits. The problem is Daniel's identity. And here is the principle that changes everything once you understand it. People rarely outperform the identity they unconsciously protect. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, built an entire philosophy around this. He wrote that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. But what he was pointing at underneath that idea is something even more profound. Your behavior is downstream of your identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-concept. If some part of you, even a quiet, unexamined part, believes you are not the kind of person who succeeds at a certain level, your brain will find 1,000 creative ways to confirm that belief. Procrastination, self-sabotage, sudden illness before an important opportunity, unconscious conflict with the people and situations that could actually elevate you. It won't feel like self-sabotage. It will feel like bad timing, bad luck, not being ready yet. But Daniel's biggest limitation wasn't fear. It was something much harder to detect. Your brain filters reality. I need you to actually sit with that for a moment, because we say it casually and completely underestimate what it means. Right now, in this very moment, there are millions of pieces of information surrounding you. Sounds, sensory input, visual data, environmental signals, more information than your conscious mind could ever process. And your brain, acting as a ruthlessly efficient survival machine, filters almost all of it out. What does it show you? What matches your internal identity? This is the function of a structure in your brain called the reticular activating system, the RAS. It acts as a gating mechanism between the outside world and your conscious experience. And it is calibrated almost entirely by your dominant beliefs about yourself and what is real. This is why two people can walk into the exact same room and have completely different experiences. One person sees opportunity, the other sees threat. One sees possibility, the other sees evidence of why it won't work. They are not seeing different rooms. They are seeing the same room through different filters. And the filter isn't neutral. It isn't objective. It is shaped by every belief you have absorbed, every identity you have adopted, every story your nervous system decided was true about who you are and what you deserve. Here is what this meant for Daniel. Daniel was surrounded by opportunity. Real, legitimate, accessible opportunity. People around him were making moves. Doors were opening. Invitations were being extended. But his RAS, calibrated to a self-concept that said he wasn't quite ready, wasn't quite enough, filtered most of it into the background. The opportunity was there. He just couldn't see it, because his brain was showing him evidence for the story it already believed. And this is the high attention paradox that makes this so difficult to escape on your own. Your brain protects what it knows, even when what it knows is hurting you. It doesn't protect it because it wants you to suffer. It protects it because familiarity equals safety, and safety equals survival. Your brain genuinely cannot distinguish between a limiting belief and a vital survival mechanism. To your nervous system, changing your identity feels like dying. And there is something else happening in 2025 that is making all of this dramatically worse. Modern systems are not designed to help you break out of your conditioning. They are designed to deepen it. The attention economy, the entire architecture of the platforms you use every single day, is built on one biological lever: dopamine. Every notification, every scroll, every algorithmically served content experience is engineered to keep your nervous system in a low-grade state of stimulation and reaction. And a stimulated, reactive nervous system is not a rewiring nervous system. When you are constantly overstimulated, you cannot access the deeper, slower brainwave states where genuine neural change actually happens. You stay on the surface. You stay reactive. You stay in the loop. The ancient survival brain and the modern attention economy are working together, completely unintentionally, but with devastating effectiveness, to keep you exactly where you are. Which means the rewiring work is not just personal. It is, in a very real sense, countercultural. Now, if you have been finding this video genuinely valuable so far, this is the moment I'd ask you to subscribe to The Right Mindset. Not because of a number on a screen, but because what we explore on this channel is built specifically for this, for the people who are ready to understand themselves at a level that actually changes things. Subscribe now and stay close. What comes next in this video, and in every video after it, is designed to go deeper than anything surface-level self-help ever will. Because neuroscience discovered something even more disturbing about why most people's attempts to change ultimately fail. Here is something nobody in the motivation industry wants to tell you. Motivation is emotional weather. Identity is climate. Weather changes every day, sometimes every hour. You wake up feeling inspired and purposeful, and ready to become the best version of yourself. And by 3 p.m., you are horizontal on a couch wondering where the energy went. And you blame yourself. You decide you are not disciplined enough, not committed enough, not hungry enough. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that motivation is a dopamine-driven emotional state. And dopamine is designed to spike and fall. That is literally its biological function, to give you a surge of drive toward a goal, and then to normalize once the goal is either achieved or abandoned. You cannot build a new life on a neurochemical that was designed to fluctuate. You were never supposed to. Andrew Huberman and other leading neuroscientists have been increasingly clear on this point. Sustainable behavioral change doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from repetition that gradually lowers the resistance your nervous system has toward new behavior. It comes from making the unfamiliar familiar, slowly, deliberately, through consistent action taken even when the emotional weather has turned cold. But there's a layer beneath even this that almost nobody addresses. Your nervous system has a set point. Not a set point for your weight or your health, a set point for your identity. A familiar emotional range that it has learned to call home. And anytime you begin moving outside of that range, anytime you start growing too fast, succeeding too visibly, taking up more space than your conditioning says you're allowed, your nervous system fires a correction signal. It doesn't feel like a correction signal. It feels like fear, like doubt, like suddenly needing to reorganize your entire home office before you can do the work that would actually change your life. It feels like you're protecting yourself, but what you're actually doing is protecting the old identity. The small one, the familiar one, the one your nervous system decided was you. And then there is something even more painful. Daniel eventually realized it too. He was sitting, not after a major failure, not after some dramatic breakdown, just sitting quietly one evening, reviewing another year that had passed mostly beneath his potential. And he realized something that hit him harder than any motivational speaker ever had. He had spent years trying to improve his life, while secretly believing he didn't deserve a better one. That's it. That's the entire trap. Not the habits, not the systems, not the information. The belief running silently underneath all of it, the one that said improvement was possible in theory, but a genuinely different life was for someone else. And once he saw it, really saw it, he couldn't unsee it. Which means, for the first time, he could actually begin. This is the part where everything either stays theoretical or becomes real. And I want to be honest with you before we go into it. This is not a 3-step hack. This is not a morning routine that transforms you in 30 days. Rewiring a conditioned nervous system is real work. It is slower than motivation culture wants to admit. And it is more possible than your limiting beliefs want you to believe. Here is how it actually works. Step 1 is awareness. You cannot change a script you cannot see. This sounds obvious until you realize how invisible most of your operating beliefs actually are. They don't announce themselves as beliefs. They announce themselves as facts, as the way things are, as just how you are. The work of awareness is forensic. It means learning to look at your emotional reactions, your behavioral patterns, your chronic avoidances, your reflexive self-talk, and asking a different kind of question. Not what is wrong with me, but what was I taught to believe here? Not why can't I change, but what identity am I currently protecting? When Daniel started doing this, he didn't find dramatic childhood trauma. He found smaller things, repeated messages, absorbed environments, conclusions he had quietly drawn before he was old enough to question them. Things like visibility leads to judgment. Success creates distance from people you love. You don't come from the kind of family that builds something big. None of those beliefs came with a label on them. They came in the packaging of experience. And now they were running his life. Just seeing them clearly, as beliefs rather than facts, was the beginning of the end of their power. Step 2 is interruption. Once you can see the pattern, the next task is to interrupt it before it runs automatically. This is where practices like meditation become something far more strategic than relaxation. When you sit in stillness regularly, deliberately, you are training your prefrontal cortex to observe your own mental activity rather than being completely absorbed by it. You are building the gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap choice lies. Journaling works similarly. Not journaling to vent, not journaling to document your day, journaling to interrogate your assumptions, to catch the belief before it acts, to write it down, examine it, and consciously decide whether it is one you are choosing to keep. Joe Dispenza, whose work sits at the intersection of neuroscience and identity change, puts it this way. To change is to think greater than how you feel. That line deserves to be held for a moment. Because the feeling is always going to come first. The familiar emotional state, the anxiety, the doubt, the pull toward the known, will always arrive before the new behavior feels natural. The question is whether you are going to let the feeling make the decision. Interruption means you don't. Not every time, but increasingly. With practice, with deliberate, repeated effort. Environment redesign matters here too. Your environment is constantly sending your nervous system signals about who you are. The spaces you inhabit, the people you spend time with, the inputs you allow into your attention, all of it is either reinforcing the old identity or gently building evidence for the new one. You cannot rewire your brain while surrounding yourself with everything that continuously confirms the pattern you're trying to escape. Step 3 is reinforcement. Neuroplasticity is not a one-time event. It is a process, and the process requires repetition. New neural pathways are built through consistent, repeated activation. Every time you think the thought that belongs to the new identity, and then act in alignment with it, you are laying down another layer of that pathway. Every time you interrupt the old pattern and choose differently, you are simultaneously weakening the old root and strengthening the new one. This is why ritual matters. Not ritual in a vague, spiritual sense. Ritual as deliberate, repeated behavior that tells your nervous system who you are becoming. It is why daily structure matters. Not because discipline is virtuous in the abstract, but because your nervous system learns its new normal through repetition. The new behavior has to become familiar before it becomes automatic. And it becomes familiar only through consistent, intentional practice, even when it doesn't feel natural yet. Especially when it doesn't feel natural yet. Transformation is rarely explosive. It is ritualized. The people who genuinely change their lives are not the ones who had the biggest breakthrough moment. They are the ones who kept showing up to the small, quiet, invisible work of becoming someone different, long after the initial inspiration had faded, long before the results made it obvious that something was shifting. That consistency, that ritualized commitment to the new identity, is what eventually tips the nervous system. I don't want this to stay theoretical, so let me show you that this is not philosophy. This is documented neuroscience applied through human will. Barbara Arrowsmith Young was told, as a child, that she had one of the most severe learning disabilities on record. Her spatial reasoning was so impaired that she could not read a clock face. She could not understand cause and effect. Educators told her to accept her limitations and find ways to manage around them. She refused. She spent years designing targeted cognitive exercises to retrain the specific parts of her brain that were underperforming, not managing around them, but directly working to change them. And she did. She not only rewired her own brain, she eventually built schools based on the same principle, helping thousands of children change the cognitive patterns that had been written off as permanent. Norman Doidge, a psychiatrist and researcher, documented case after case of radical neuroplastic change in his landmark work, The Brain That Changes Itself. People recovering from strokes, from developmental disorders, from injuries that conventional medicine said were permanent. The consistent thread across all of it was the same. The brain, given the right inputs delivered through sustained effort and attention, can change in ways that once seemed impossible. And neuroscientist Lara Boyd, in her widely viewed research presentation, made the principle plain. The primary driver of neuroplastic change is behavior. Not insight, not intention, not positive thinking. Behavior, repeated, deliberate, sustained behavior, aimed at a specific outcome, is what actually rewires the brain. Which means everything we have talked about in this video. The awareness, the interruption, the reinforcement is not self-help. It is applied neuroscience. And the people who apply it not perfectly, not easily, but persistently, are the ones who actually escape the script. Here is where Daniel ends up. Not in a dramatic montage, not in a single transformative morning, not in a version of himself that is unrecognizable from the outside. He ends up in a quieter, more profound kind of change. He starts catching the belief before it acts. He starts interrupting the pattern before it completes. He starts making small, consistent choices that belong to the person he is deciding to become, rather than the person his conditioning decided he was. And slowly, slower than he wanted, more steadily than he expected, his nervous system updates. The resistance doesn't disappear, but it loosens. The ceiling doesn't shatter, but it rises. The invisible weight he had been carrying, the one he didn't even have a name for until he learned to look, becomes something he can feel and choose to set down, rather than something that simply runs him without his awareness. That is the transformation. It doesn't look like the highlight reel. It looks like someone finally becoming the author of their own mind. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their outcomes without ever changing the identity that is creating them. They chase results while the deeper pattern runs untouched. But your identity is not fixed. Your nervous system can learn a new future. The science is unambiguous on this. The examples are real. The pathway is difficult, and it is available. You do not become successful by wishing harder. You do not become successful by finding the perfect productivity system, while the old identity remains intact underneath. You become successful by becoming someone your own mind no longer fights. By making the new version of yourself the familiar one. By showing up to the rewiring work, not with perfect consistency, not without setbacks, but with the understanding that every deliberate choice is literally building a different brain. And that brain will see different things, filter for different opportunities, make different decisions, produce a different life. Not because the world changed, because you did. I want to ask you something before you leave this video. What is one belief, one quiet background assumption about yourself, or what is possible for you, that you are making a decision right now to stop carrying into your future? It might sound like, I'm too late. Or, I'm not the kind of person who succeeds at that level. Or, people like me don't end up with that kind of life. Or simply, I'm not ready yet, when the truth is you've been ready for longer than you know. Write it in the comments. Not for me. Write it because naming a belief is the first act of power over it. Write it because someone else will read it and finally find the words for something they have been carrying silently for years. Nobody rewires their life completely alone. And the comment section of this video is a place where that work begins in community. This channel exists for one specific kind of person. The person who refuses to stay mentally programmed by a past they never consciously chose. The person who knows, even quietly, even imperfectly, that they were made for something more. And who is finally ready to stop waiting for the right mood, the right moment, the right version of themselves to arrive, and start becoming that version now. If that is you, subscribe to the right mindset. Because the next video we are releasing may name the exact pattern that has been quietly running your decisions for longer than you realize, and show you the specific point at which most people's rewiring attempts break down, and how to get past it. You don't want to miss it. This is the right mindset, and the work starts here.